Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So the new banners for Itto's banners have been released, the information. So we're going to do a quick review of them, as well as a Constellation math comparison for Itto himself, as well as his weapon, his signature weapon from R1 to R5. I'll talk about the rest of the banners, the rest of the weapons on the banner, as well as the rest of the characters on the banner as well. So first also let's talk about the character banner itself. You have Itto, you have Xiangling, Gorou, and Barbara. Gorou being on Itto's banner is really good. It means that you should be able to get, if you're not too unlucky, you should be able to get something like a C2 plus Gorou, hopefully. C2 Gorou, together with a C0 Itto. A C2 Gorou does improve, does give a substantial improvement to Itto in the sense that the last 3 seconds of Itto's burst, you will be able to get Gorou's buff as well. Because what C2 Gorou does is that it increases your burst from 9 seconds to 12 seconds every time you get a... It increases by 1 second every time you get a crystallized shard, and it goes up to 3 seconds. And if you factor in the cast time of Gorou's burst along with Itto's burst, etc., all in all, it matches perfectly. If your C2 Gorou effect is matched at the plus 3 seconds, it matches perfectly at the end of Itto's burst. So this is very nice. Obviously, if you get C6 Gorou, it's all the more better, because C6 Gorou gives 40% Joe damage. Oh, sorry, 40% crit damage. 40% crit damage, which is really good. Now, Itto himself has crit rate ascension substat. Coupled with the high crit damage from his signature weapon, you can actually go for 100% CR. Now, if you want to know for the other 4-star weapons like Serpent Spine and Whiteblind whether it's possible to go for 100% CR target, etc., be sure to check out my weapon comparison math guide for Itto. I'll put the link in the top right corner up here. It's also available as a in-video link, and I'll put it in the description as well, so you guys can easily access those. Okay. Now, in regards to the banner, the other 2 characters, Xiangling, always a popular Pyro F2P character. Barbara, also a good Hydro Healer. So these banner characters are really not too bad. Definitely worth pulling on. I guess given that there are already 2 Joe characters, we wouldn't have Noelle here, but otherwise if you have Noelle here, it would be great, because Noelle also works very well together with Gorou. And even the signature weapon is good for Noelle. Basically, Noelle is like the 4-star version of Itto, but just bear in mind that Noelle won't be able to hit Itto figures, that's for sure. Okay? Now, before I go further to talk about the weapon, let's talk about the Constellation comparison on Itto. Now, to do that, before we do that, we'll just quickly look at we'll just do a recap of his constellations, what they do, and then we'll do the constellation comparison. Then we'll go on to the weapon. Alright? Now, first off, let's look at his constellations. These are now updated based on the changes that were done during the beta. So, C1 is very straightforward. What C1 does is that instead of using the normal attacks to gain stats, it basically allows you to be able to get your stats without having to use your normal attacks. The moment you use it, you get 2 of his superlative super strength stats, which is stats required for him to do his Kesagiri slashes, which is a charge attack. Or you can think of it as a special charge attack that he has. And after the first second, you get 1 stat automatically given to you every 0.5 seconds, and it stops after 3 times. So in other words, C1 itself gives you 5 stats. Okay? Now the important thing about this C1 is that, like I said, it can avoid using normal attacks and go straight to Kesagiri combo. And since majority of his damage comes from his Kesagiri combo, this does give you a better damage increase as opposed to C0. But how much? We'll look at the Constellation comparison later. Now, C2. C2 right now, after the latest changes, this is at a cap of 4.5 second cooldown reduction and 18 energy restored. Now, Itto's burst is on a cooldown of 18 seconds and duration is 11 seconds. So reducing a 4.5 second cooldown is very substantial for him. It's very substantial. But theoretically, you do need to ensure that you meet the energy requirements. And in fact, in my Constellation comparison, I actually gave a bit of an allowance. We are not fully utilizing this 4.5 second cooldown. It's more like utilizing about 3 seconds. It's more of like we are utilizing 3 seconds of it. But there are definitely ways to optimize. There may be ways to optimize the Constellation around, but you do sacrifice damage on some other character. For example, you may end up with Gorou's buff not being applied to Albedo's E, for example. Those I will try out once Itto is released, but based on the Constellation that we have, the rotation that we have done on math so far, I'll say the Constellation comparison will be based on about a 3 second cooldown reduction. Okay? Increasing the elemental skill. Now, his elemental skill, while it does not skill off of defense, you gotta know that the way Itto works is that his defense is added on to his attack, which means that this burst also gets to skill based off of his defense. And this skill has a very high modifier, so it's actually pretty nice. It's a very nice portion of his damage. C4, unfortunately we no longer have the super OP C4 that gives you 25% crit rate. Instead, now we get 20% defense and 20% attack bonus for 10 seconds to each of the party members, which is still nice because you're gonna have Gorou and you're gonna have other flat slot characters that are based off of attack, so effectively Itto buffs everyone after his burst ends. C5, this basically increases your defense skilling because when your burst level increases, more of your defense gets added to attack. And then finally, with the super OP Constellation, Itto's charge attacks dealing 70% increased crit damage, and additionally, he has a 50% chance to not consume stats of his superlative strength. So, this is kind of the reverse of Eula, where Eula gets a 50% to gain additional stack for her burst. Itto has a 50% chance to not consume, and basically it allows him to keep swinging his Kesagiri. So this is the quick recap on the Constellations. Now let's look at the comparison itself, the math comparison itself. Now, in order to have a fair comparison, especially for C2 where downtime is involved, we are looking at 2 rotations worth of figures divided by the actual duration taken up. You'll notice that this C2 is only 3 seconds shorter than the C1 or C0, as like I said, we are only utilizing about 3 seconds of the cooldown reduction. Theoretically speaking, if you are willing to sacrifice albedo damage, you can even reduce this downtime even further by making it such that from the second Q onwards, so the second rotations onward, or no, actually not just the second rotation onward, you can actually reduce it quite significantly by ensuring that your albedo doesn't get the buff from Gorou. If you're willing to sacrifice albedo. Which is why I didn't recommend building albedo too much, right? I recommended not to get any of albedo's constellations as well. So anyway, that is one possible option, and I'll try it out on day 1 of Itto's release. But as of now, we are going to be conservative and we'll just take off 3 seconds. If I take off more than 3 seconds, C2 to C1, and including all other constellations after C2, they're going to get a much bigger damage boost over C0 and C1. Right now I'm being very conservative and very kind to the lower constellations, so to speak. So these are the damage figures per second. Okay, DPS per second, sorry, there should be DPS as well. And this is DPS as well. Now, bear in mind that all of this duration here we are assuming that you're not using Albedo's burst, because Albedo's burst easily adds another 2 seconds, not ideal. And I also assume the energy requirements are met for C2. Okay, not just Itto, but entire team. Which theoretically speaking in a triple Geo team should be doable, with a little bit of base ER rolls on the artifact substats. So let's look at the actual comparison itself. C0 versus C1 is only 10%. Like I said, C0 versus C1 is more of a playstyle change where you don't need to remember how many normal attacks to use, etc. You just go straight into Kesagiri. If you want to see the actual string, check out my Itto math guide. The very first guide, I talk about that, how the attack string should be like. You can also see the updated one after the changes, where I talk about, if I didn't remember, there's no change to the attack string, at least for C1. But do check out those videos. I'll put all the necessary links, related links up in the top right corner. Now, C1 versus C6, we get a 62% increase. So once you go from C1 to C6 is a 62% increase. It's very hefty. Okay. And C0 versus C6 is a whopping 79%. This, by the way, is higher than some of the top tier characters like Ayaka, for example. the cumulative total DPS increase. It's a lot higher than Albedo. Albedo is only about 40+%. This is 79%. It's crazy how good his C6 is. Oh, and C2 to C1 is about 10%. Sorry, I missed this out. It's about 10%. Yeah. Slightly more than 10%. Okay, so weapon-wise, okay, although I've not talked about weapon banner, the weapons are very straightforward. It's about 18 to 20% regardless of what kind of rotations you are doing or what kind of okay, I shouldn't say what kind of constellation, because for the constellation these are the values, but what I'm trying to say is that regardless of the number of rotations, your weapon refinement from R1 to R5, the percentage doesn't change. It's about 18 to 20%. So if you ask me, it's better to go for C6 R1 rather than C0 R5 if you have to choose between the two. But let's say for C0 versus R1 weapon, if you have Serpent Spine, it's more or less the same between the two, because if you saw my updated Itto figures, right, Serpent Spine, R5 Serpent Spine versus a R1 Redhorn Stone Treasure, the difference is 5%, about 5.4%. So Redhorn Stone Treasure is better by 5.4%, but it has not included the caveats. And R1 Serpent Spine versus R5 Redhorn Stone Treasure is about 13.4%. So honestly, if you ask me between C1 and R1, I would recommend to go for R1. Although it takes you more pulls to get R1. But I would recommend to go for R1 rather than C1. But at the same time, we have Gorou, right? So it is worthwhile to pull on the character banner just to get more constellations for Gorou too. So honestly, it's a hard decision. But I suppose if you have a R5 SS or a R5 Whiteblind, yeah, and you don't like pulling on your chances on the weapon banner, it might be better to go for Constellation. But I'll talk more about that once I review the weapon banner too. Okay. So next up, let's look at if we have to do 3 rotations. How do the constellations then fare? It's actually going to get better. C2 plus is going to get better the more rotations you are doing, the more continuous combat that you are doing with your Itto. Like between your downtime, if you're moving to another area, you quickly engage in combat as well, like you have with like Labyrinth, Warriors, Mist Dungeon, etc. So those are scenarios where you may or may not utilize the downtime, really depends on how far the next point is. But I hope it helps you appreciate, right, that the more rotations that you are doing, continuous rotations that you are doing, the better C2 plus is, which is why the percentages are now even better. Okay, weapon refinements remain kind of the same here. Now, let's look at the weapon banner itself. Let's go back to the weapon banner. This weapon banner, the second weapon we have, Skyward Hub. The second 5-star weapon is Skyward Hub. The first is obviously Itto's signature weapon, Redhorn Stone Treasure, which has 88.2 crit damage level 90. That's crazy good. And this weapon banner also has the Ally Flash, which is not a bad weapon for Gorou, because Gorou can make use of the stacking of the damage off field for Ally Flash. So that's nice. Skyward Hub is also a decent weapon for Gorou, but personally, these two weapons to me are more about focusing on Gorou's damage. If you want to focus on Gorou's ability as a buffer, a will or a slow payer option will be Allergy for the end, especially if while pulling for Homa on the Gutao rerun banner you manage to get a Allergy for the end. That Allergy for the end is well used for Gorou, because you get to give a 20% attack buff to your teammates. Actually, I think I have it to show here. Let me just quickly show it. Yeah, so Allergy for the end is here. You get to give a 20% attack buff. And the 100 EM helps as well for getting stronger crystallized shields. So this is what I'm going to be using on my Gorou. You can also use a Where's that weapon? Stringless. Stringless is fine as well. If you want to give more, if you want to give better shield to him, and he also gives decent boost. Obviously, it's not the best. Alley Flash, like I said. Oh, sorry, this is Alley Hunter. Oh my god, sorry. My apologies. That is not a Alley Hunter weapon on the weapon banner. It is the Fisher weapon. My apologies. This is the Fisher main weapon. It's in German. I forgot what was the name of this weapon. Mitternoch. This weapon is good for Fisher main DPS. Alley Flash is the sword here. My apologies. I was thinking of Alley Hunter when I saw Alley Flash. Yeah, I got that mixed up. So, in other words, this weapon is good for Fisher main DPS, not really for Gorou. This sword is good for Bennett, on the other hand, because this sword has an even higher base attack than, say, a Skyward Blade. You have a Voluminous Lance, you have Sacrificial Fragment. Sacrificial Fragment always good, the bell is absolutely horrible. So on this banner, I'll say that there are 2 good weapons and 1 good weapon for Fisher if you want to main her DPS, but not that great. So for Gorou's weapons itself, this is not that great of a banner. Skyward Heart is decent if you want to do a sub DPS Gorou, but for buffing wise, I'll personally prefer to use Allergy for the end, if you have that. If you don't have that, then the next option is to go for a ER bow. ER bow to give you... Sorry, I usually use controllers. I'm not that familiar with the interface for mouse and keyboard. You can try using this for Voluminous Warbow, but bear in mind that for Voluminous Warbow's effect is only when you are active, when your character is on the screen. It does not work off field, so just need to make sure that you are on field in order to proc this. So in terms of the weapon banner, honestly, those weapon choices are not that great for Gorou. But if you already have the 2 weapons that I was talking about, either the Allergy for the end or the Voluminous Warbow, or even Sacrificial Bow if you really want to, not that it really helps that much, because the energy particles from Gorou isn't that high as well. It's not like Diona who can fully make use of that. So this is the weapon banner. Redhorn Stone Treasure left, let's say it right, R1 to R5 you get a 20% boost, so that's very nice. That's pretty decent for R1 to R5, or rather pretty typical. But R1 of this weapon itself is really good, unless you have R5 Serpent Spine. But even R5 Serpent Spine, like I said, with the caveats, right, most likely you're not going to be 5% lesser than Redhorn Stone Treasure, it will probably be lower, probably around 10%. And that's if you have R5 Serpent Spine. If you only have R1 Serpent Spine, then all the more you should try to go for Redhorn Stone Treasure, if you're willing to take the risk on the weapon banner. Okay, if you're willing to take the risk on the weapon banner. That's what I can say. For me personally, I'll definitely pull for this weapon, and I'll definitely pull for C6 Itto. Because like I said, I really like his C6. So I hope this weapon, this banner review plus Constellation math comparison has been helpful to you guys, along with the refinement comparison as well for math. Unfortunately, there aren't really other good weapon options on this banner for Gorou, and there's no good 4-star weapon for Itto as well. I mean, you're better off with Whiteblind or Serpent Spine compared to these weapons for Itto. Now, if you want to know what is the weapon comparison, how the weapon comparison looks like, you can check out my weapon comparison video, the latest one, the updated Itto figures and updated weapon comparison, and then you can decide from there whether or not you want to pull for this weapon banner. Maybe you're happy with how your Whiteblind performs in terms of the damage figures, or either in terms of damage figures or in terms of the percentage. And if you're happy with that, then no need to pull for this weapon. You're better off pulling for more Itto and more Gorou, because C6 Gorou is a very very nice boost to all Joe characters, not just defense skilling Joe characters. So in theory, right, if you do have a R5 Whiteblind or R5 Serpent Spine, it might be better to try to get a C6 Gorou before attempting to pull for the weapon banner. But this weapon banner is really good. Or rather, this weapon is really good. I shouldn't say the weapon banner is good. This weapon is really good for Itto. Even though I showed the Serpent Spine figure as 5.5%, you know what? Let me just go to the... Well, I might as well just show quickly the weapon comparison. I'm not going to go to the caveats. If you want to go to caveats, if you want to know about the caveats, check out my video where I talk about the updated weapon comparison. But I want to just say that with the caveats, right, the percentage of this will go even, the gap will go even bigger between R5 Serpent Spine and R1 Redhorn. Okay, just bear that in mind. Now for Whiteblind, these are the figures. If you're happy with these Whiteblind figures, you may consider pulling for more C6 Gorou instead. If you're not happy with these figures, then you may try to get one R1 Redhorn Stone Treasure. But if you ask me the value between a C6 Gorou versus a R1 Redhorn Stone Treasure, a C6 Gorou will be higher. In fact, I do have the figure somewhere here. Yeah, C6 Gorou easily gives you like 40.5%. Yeah, you know those, this is the correct one. So C6 Gorou easily gives you additional 40.5% as opposed to what the weapon can give you. But bear in mind, this is with Redhorn Stone Treasure, so there is already a scaling involved here. But I'll say this, C6 Gorou definitely can give you more than a Redhorn Stone Treasure. So it may be more worthwhile to try to get a C6 Gorou before you try for a Redhorn Stone Treasure, especially if your resources are limited, and we all know how demanding on resources the weapon banner is. And given that Serpent Spine and Whiteblind does perform well for Gorou, it's really not a bad thing to focus on the character banner. Just don't expect your Serpent Spine or Whiteblind to do more damage than a Redhorn Stone Treasure. So if you ask me, I would rather go for a C6 Gorou if I have additional pulls than a Redhorn Stone Treasure. Okay, but one other thing to take note is that the next version is rumored to be Ganyu, Xiao rerun banner, as well as you have the new characters Shenhe and Yunjin. So you may also choose to just go for a C0 Itto with a C2 plus Gorou plus a Whiteblind or Serpent Spine, and save your pools for the next upcoming banners, which have really good characters as well. So player's choice regarding that. Okay, if you like the content, remember to like the video and please subscribe for more. Bye.